So I think we can start, Moritz. Is that fine?
Yeah, good to go.
Sounds good. So everyone, just before we start, a few things here. We are recording this session, so we have a lot of people who wants to join us, but because of work or family commitments, they might be unable to. So we hope at least that we can provide them, the further information from the wonderful research that Moritz has put across, and that's going to share shortly, as well as the insights from our wonderful panelists that's joining today. So if you don't want to appear on the recording, feel free to turn off the video, but we're going to have a bit of interactive session towards the end of the session. So feel free to turn back on so that we can see each other's smiling faces at the end of the Monday evening or Monday afternoon, depending on where you dial in from. If you're not speaking, can I ask you to kindly also mute your phone so that we can hear the speakers clearly. So to start, my name is Carolina Yo. I'm dialing in all the way from the sunny little small red dot island of Singapore. I'm the co-founder of N Ahead, and the idea of N Ahead was really for sessions like that to bring together the community of individuals that are rethinking and looking into our careers, depending on which life stage we are, so that no matter which stage, whether are we mid-career individuals, do we just have children, or do we have aging parents? Do we want to look into prolonging our career lifespans, or do we want to look into meaningful careers moving ahead? And Ahead is a community for discussions like that. We also work very closely with companies who looks into work-life harmony and looks into how to create, that purpose within the organizations of individuals who are very passionate and wants to integrate the very experienced minds of people depending on where they are, and also bring in the diversity of individuals from across the world, who is keen to discuss topics such as today, specifically looking into portfolio careers. I have also within the call several of my colleagues. You see Priyanka, who's on the call, who's responsible for our marketing and outreach. We have as well, I think, I don't see it on the screen right now. There's so many of you. We have as well Britta Musfelter, who is my co-founder, who is now based in Germany. And then we have the lovely Moritz, who we have this good partnership with. Moritz and I met several years ago, right, Moritz, in Singapore. And then the last meeting, coincidentally, we were both in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. We shared different food lovings of from two different regions together, as you have seen from one of Moritz's posts as well. But I think it's very important, the work that we do, because one of the topics that we are going to tackle today as well is that with aging population, with fast pace of technology, career is more than a way to feed the families. It's also about our identity. How can we bring meaning? How can we serve the community that we live in? So I'm really personally also very excited for this discussion, and Moritz has bringing across also very good insights and research for both individuals who are looking into this transition, but also for companies, right? How do we tap and be competitive as organizations? So Moritz run a wonderful community, one of the largest, to my knowledge, Moritz, in Singapore and Asia, called Portfolio Careers in Asia. And I'm very excited to hear more. And following on later on, before I let you take over, Moritz, we have as well Lydia, who's on the call today, as well as Melissa. They are going to bring with them and share a bit of insights of their own experience, whether as fractionals, or whether as head of HR, or whether as even hiring individuals, and hiring managers, I meant, and how they manage, whether for themselves or for their organization, look at different job models, such as what we're going to discuss a bit more detailed today in the term of fractional and portfolios. And for those who don't know the definition of fractionals and portfolio, Moritz, then I leave it in your good hands to explain a bit more, because this terminology is not always known, I think, in different parts of the world, right? So Moritz, then over to you. I'll stop sharing here as well.
We'll definitely get to that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Carolina, for having me. Thank you for the invitation. I think what you and Ahead are doing is amazing. And I'm also super happy that today is a little bit of clearly led by you and Ahead, but a bit of a collision of communities.
Definitely.
interested, and quite a few of had quite a few signups also from portfolio careers in Asia. It's a collision of the Berlin Singapore bridge. So all of this is awesome. I think I love all this.
Wonderful.
Because good things come from bringing different perspectives together, right? So this is what can everyone see my my slide?
Yes,
Now,
we can.
Can I forward it like this? Can you see another slide now?
No.
No. Okay, then let me try like this. There we go.
Yes.
Perfect.
Excellent. Let me jump right in very, very briefly. My name is Moritz. I spent around 18 years running operations and teams for agencies and consulting businesses, almost all of which in Asia and the Middle East. And then I spent a few years with a corporate venture that was a spin-off of Allianz. So I went into the startup world for a while. And since then, I run two things, two ventures. The first one is Flexer, where we provide fractional leaders and senior freelancers as a service to tackle some very specific challenges and fill skills gaps with SMEs and enterprises mostly, and some startups too. And then I run a second venture, which is Portfolio Careers in Asia, which is the leading community of CXOs in Asia looking to do something outside of the corporate career. We're now at 1,400 members and just an amazing caliber of people, honestly. And a lot of them are here today. So thank you for joining. Why are we here? How did this all come about? We have what we're seeing in Asia, and this is kind of driven out of Singapore for Southeast Asia for sure, is a rise of independent talent. The freelance economy has really picked up here. It's nowhere near where it is in Europe and the US, I think, but there's a realization on the talent side and on the also with a bit of a lag on the employer side that you can get operators on an independent basis that are often better than consultants and sometimes better than full-time hires because they're hands-on, they're committed, and they have deep operational experience they can share. And so there's something definitely breaking open here. We've been active for quite a while in this space. And after a year or so, myself and a few of our, I would say, collaborators in this space, other people building something in this space, got together and said, we have so much movement here that we see, so much development, but we cannot grasp it. We don't have any facts around it, very, very little data around it. And so we decided to run a research study end of last year, which I believe is the first baseline, really. And that was the ambition, to create a baseline for the Singapore independent workforce and the economy that is building on top of that. And really the ambition was also, and these are, you see the collaborators here at the bottom of the screen, we got together and we said, let's create that baseline, but let's also talk about what this means for both, for talent and for enterprise. And we've had some quite hard-hitting insights coming out of this. I'm going to spend about 15 minutes talking about these. Don't want to hold anything back. The top 5 insights in my view are right here up front. So the first one is we're looking at a very senior and experienced independent workforce in Singapore that's emerging. The second one is that they are actually making significant revenue out of the work that they're doing. And you'll see that it is comparable to what they were making full-time previously. The third, I would say, quite striking insight is that they are very, very optimistic about the future. And we have some numbers to what they're expecting to earn in future, which is, I think, a very good indicator of that. The fourth, then, is that these engagements also from organizations are getting more long-term and more senior. And we have some really good insights around what sort of skills are needed for the sort of work they're doing. That gives us an idea of the sort of work everybody's doing in this space. And then startups are clearly leading the way still. But there is some indication that other sectors are getting started too. So with that, let me jump into a bit more deeply into some of the insights that we found. And starting with the seniority, this is quite striking. And what you see on the left side here is the proportion. This is people that are working in part-time or independent work or advisory work on the side. So they are still fully employed. And yet about a third of the ones that we surveyed here, you say 34%, say they are doing some work on the side. They are advising startups possibly, or doing other sort of advisory work, or potentially independent board director work, etc. on the side. And you see the age breakup here, which is quite significant in this age. You see the age range, orange and yellow, 35 to 55 is really the bulk of it. And this becomes even more pronounced if you look on the right side. This is people who are full-time independent. And there you look at the age range 35 to 55 at almost 90%. So we have really a trend to younger generations looking at still at the full-time job in many ways as kind of the building blocks of their career, but there's that segment after 35 years old that starts breaking out from that. And then if we look at the actual fees, the income, the income that that the independent workers we surveyed are getting from the work that they're doing, you can also see how this is going up with years of experience. So if you look at the left side, it starts with on the bottom 1 to 2 years work experience. This is overall work experience, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, and already there it's getting into the sort of 100,000, 50 to 100,000 to 150,000 Singapore dollars a year. And you see after 10 to 20 years of work experience, it really more than 20 years breaks open into up to 250,000 Singapore dollars plus a year. Also an indication, of course, possibly, we cannot say this, there's still questions unanswered, but possibly those who are maybe in the more junior range here are doing more work on the side. Not sure, right? But there's definitely someone breaking out at the top, quite a significant segment that's making a significant significant revenue from this. And so clearly it's driven by experience, education, and skills, the fees that you can command. And very reflective also of the sort of capabilities that independent workers in Singapore are bringing to their clients. You see the top three here: communication, problem solving, strategic thinking, followed by interpersonal relationship building, critical thinking. You see that these are definitely leadership traits. So how we read this is to say that these people are involved in decision making and in client management, actually. And so these are sorts of the senior skills that they're also getting hired for. When you then look at the sort of sectors in which they're active, and there it's quite diverse, I would say. There is, of course, the top bar at 19% with professional services. Does lend itself, because if you are in professional services, clearly you can carve that out into, let's say, an individual services practice. You can be an independent operator in this, offering the same service again, right? So that's obviously like a very straightforward way to go independent if you're in that field. But then the sectors that follow: information and communication, education, financial and insurance services, the three next ones together make up 37%. The takeaway from the research firm here was that, and you see that on the right side, is these are all sectors that are undergoing some form of a transition. And so this could be an indicator. Again, this is not what we surveyed, but or maybe the people in the room have different ideas. But why are these sectors popular for sort of independent talent coming in? Yeah. Then, and this is the sort of companies that they work with. This is where it gets interesting when you see that there are clearly not only startups in this space. It's not unusual in the US, where a lot of this sort of engagement is coming from, this sort of model is coming from. Startups were leading the way as well there. This has changed now, of course. There are big enterprises building independent workforce clouds, etc. But you see, this is similar to what you've seen in other parts of the world, that startups are leading the way. Possibly having to do also with now the lack of funding that they faced over the last few years. So it's a cost-saving exercise, possibly also having to do with just startups being more open to new models, not having to go through layers of approvals on new models and on new ways of bringing in skill sets. And on the right side, you then see the different ways that talent is getting engaged. Also interesting that you have long-term engagement for about a quarter. Again, maybe if just to make it a bit more tangible, long-term engagement could, of course, mean that you have a consultant who's always there, like an advisor to the founder or the CEO. Could also mean that you have a fractional CMO who's just your 2 days a month fractional CMO, but for more than a year, 2 years, etc., running your marketing activities. Short-term task specific at 40%. So that can often be these transformation projects where you go in for 1 or 2 months. Or more, and do a turnover, for example, or transformation. And the third one, project-specific advisory, which is again more in the consulting space, but each kind of somewhat equally represented here. And if we then go to, this is quite interesting also, let's look a bit at the talent drivers and the motivations. And there, because I think of the economic situation, there's sometimes this impression that it's a lot of people who have lost their jobs. And we wanted to test that because, of course, there are some, and we've heard that also in our communities, right? But in the survey, it shows that this is only 15%. If we just assume that everyone has answered honestly, and most people have, if we assume that everyone's answered honestly, we look at 15% saying difficulties in getting employed, few job opportunities. And then from there on, you see the next 5, and it is all self-motivated. Opportunity to use my skills more widely, better work-life balance, better leverage my expertise, more meaningful, impactful work, ability to choose my working hours. That together makes up a large part of the reasons of why people are going into this field and into this sort of career. I think it's very, very indicative of why this is also here to stay, because people are seeing this as being something fulfilling for the second half of their career. Especially if you look at this age segment that we surveyed in the beginning, 35 to 55, this is where you have a lot of experience under your belt. You have the opportunity to do something different that matches these 5, 6, 7 factors you see here. So of course you saw redundancy here again coming up with 5%, but overall I would say the factors that are driven by personal choice are definitely overwhelmingly in the majority here. And then what we wanted to know here is how do independent work versus full-time employment compare in terms of satisfaction? If you recall, in the beginning, we also had quite a few surveyed that are still fully employed but are doing work on the side. And this is where we have a very, very clear answer, I think, from both. So there are 2 factors where full-time talent feels more satisfied in comparison. You see that on the left. And the first one is income. Clearly, income is still a big factor for full-time employment. Again, we don't know, but it could both be equally be the amount of income. It could be in terms of numbers. It could also be in terms of steadiness of income, because for sure, if you're independent, and especially if you're just starting out, it will be a bit of an up and down in the first period of time. So for sure, income is still something that people feel is much more satisfying on the full-time side. The second one is interesting, health and well-being support. And this one is interesting because anecdotally, what keeps coming up is this concept of health insurance. And so assumption here, one hypothesis is this is why health and well-being support is still found to the full-time jobs is bringing higher satisfaction to talent, because health insurance is a major topic for independent workers. It's not so easy, of course, especially in a market like Singapore, where if you have to pay that out of your own pocket, it becomes quite a lot. But on the flip side, what you see is all other factors that we surveyed, the independent talent feels more satisfied. Career progression, skills development opportunities, feeling valued for my contributions, work autonomy and empowerment, sense of purpose, and work-life balance and flexible work. I think that's quite striking, and we don't have it in the chart, but on the right side in the paragraph you see, it does give an indication, by the way, and this was interesting, just on a side note, that those who are fully employed, but they are also doing some work on the side, show the lowest satisfaction of the 3 groups across all, which could be an indication how difficult it is to balance a full-time job. And then maybe, since you're doing this on the side, you might not have all of the benefits that you see here, the independent talents show. For example, the work-life balance might actually suffer, right? So that's an interesting one. And then if you look at the future, and this is really, I would say, a show of the optimism in the industry, because what we asked, the research agency asked the independent talents to indicate their projection for income in the coming time. And you see that at the lower levels, starting here at 50,000 Singapore dollars top left, then all the way to the 200,000, it is 2x. Yeah, 2x projected by the talents themselves. So they are saying what they believe is.
I think there is someone who has unmuted themselves. Can I ask all the participants to kindly mute so that we can hear? Yeah, thank you. It might be an accident. Thanks, Moritz.
No worries. Thank you. I thought there might have been an urgent question, which is totally fine.
There are a few questions on the note of that. So if you want to have one pause in between to answer some of this, let us know. We'll go with your lead.
Let's do that. I think one more slide, and then is a good time to pause and go straight into some questions, because I know it's a lot of information. I've already tried to boil it down. This is not even the full research, but trying to give you the highlights here so that we can have a good discussion. Yeah.
Perfect.
I would say this projection shows you the optimism. And this is people who are in it, who are working, who are winning clients, and they say, I believe I can make double, right? And then at this level of already making between 200 to 250,000 Singapore dollars, they still believe they can make 1.25 times what they're currently making, which is an incredibly strong indication of the success that they're experiencing, and the future projection, the optimism of what they think they can do with it. And this is the last piece, actually, the last insight that I want to share today, but it is a good indication, always comes from independent talent, is where do I get the work from, right? And this is the reality now. So we've done a snapshot here of where do you get the work from. On the left in the dark blue, this is all referrals from network. And it is one of the things that I hear time and again from my community also, saying your own network is where you will make your biggest and first earliest success, people you know. The second one then is social media, professional network sites, online platforms, forums, etc. So they are coming up. So there is I would say this is an indicator that the industry is getting organized somewhat. It is possible to go out on LinkedIn. It is also possible to go on platforms, networks, collectives, go with agencies and find projects through them. So which is, I think, very, very promising for an industry that for a while has been quite, I think, and it still is, rather, I would say, not as organized as it might be in the future. Right? Then the light blue, you see previous employers, which I also put into trusted network. That's a very nice one. If your employer says you're no longer with us, but we still want to work with you, let's do some projects together. And then the light orange is industry events and conferences. Also note that this is the first one that's really a cold pitch, which is quite indicative, I think, of where people get their work from. Cold pitches versus trusted network, if you look at it like that. And so this is where the spread is right now. I think a lot of space left to organize the industry more in that middle segment, and that's also where a lot of us are building businesses around. Yeah, and that's kind of let me pause here because I just have a few more information points on what this means, but maybe we take some questions first. Would that be all right?
Sounds good.
Sure.
Moritz, I think there is a question about, as well, whether how many are doing this full-time versus independent. I think you have kind of covered that. I don't know if there are absolute numbers there, but do you want to add more?
No, we don't have absolute numbers against that. And I think I can go back into the methodology, but basically we surveyed, I think, around 200 people. 200 plus respondents. And so this is more about being representative for, of course, what is a much larger independent workforce out there. So if you then take percentages, what we don't know currently is the overall extension of the independent workforce in Singapore. That is, I guess, what this question aims at. There are some indicators you can look at, for example, a new venture that has come out, which is called the Fractional Directory, which is run by Mark Mullenix, who's also a member of our community. And they are trying to capture all fractionals in Singapore in that directory, and they have a number for that. But that's only fractionals, and that's not freelancers or independent board directors, etc.
Okay, we can put a link, I think, also to their research or to their site if anyone is keen later on as well. And I think this is also the second question, which Carolyn Burns is asking as well, if it's also something that we can break down by income and by age. I guess with some of the more detailed research, we can definitely look into it later on.
So we have covered income and age, but again, it's on a base of the research from 200 talent, 200 surveyed, and then we did some qualitative interviews, especially with employers also. So that also flows into it. I'm super happy to share the full deck with all details. This would be way too much for today, but then you can have a detailed look if you're interested.
Yeah. I think it's great that we have this injection of different insights of the key points of those either individuals who are looking to do this as part of, their portfolio or do this full time, or for organizations who wants to, not miss this trend of a different, community of talent, right? So thanks for sharing that. And the feedback is this is a great research. So congratulations, Moritz, as well. Is there a breakdown?
It's a start, I would say. I think we have to do a lot more. I'll be very honest. Yeah, it's a start though, and we didn't have anything. That's where we're kind of like starting with. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think it's a good chance to collaborate and do it together. For those who are interested to do some form of partnerships within this community, one of the reasons Moritz and I got together was our strong belief that, this trend is for, in the end, social good. It's for the good of the individuals. It's good for the companies. As we move towards purposeful careers and longer life careers, right? Longer term careers as we age. So anyone who is keen, please feel free to drop a note in the chat. We're happy to also partner, and maybe we can have a further research together later after this. There's also a question from Poonam. She mentioned, within professional service, do you have a breakdown of sectors? A bit
Hi,
further?
Poonam. No, unfortunately not. I think this is
Yeah,
what we mean. Like almost every single data point we realize after, and it was already a lot, but we realize afterwards we have to go deeper, right? So that would be great to have, I think, professional services breakdown. Absolutely. So we have earmarked a lot of these questions, and it helps me now also to say, what does the next iteration look like?
perfect. And I think the iteration not only have to go a bit more deep, it has to go now across geographical region, because there's a question also from Harandeep, who said, is this for whole of Southeast Asia? Is it Singapore? Britta is asking, is it for Europe or for Germany? Do we have some information? I think we have a second research paper we need to do after this call.
Yes, I think you should do it, Carolina. I mean, I think for Europe, there's other research available already, because you have big players there also who are organizing the market, like Mod, for example. There's a few others for sure. I can also let me drop in another hint at one of our collaborators for the research is Human Cloud. Matt Potola in the US has a tremendous amount of data on his platform, and a lot of it, I think, is just available if you either for free or have to sign up. I don't remember, but if you want to look at the industry numbers, there's a lot there. We didn't have anything on Asia, and yes, we decided to do Singapore first. Southeast Asia would have been a tremendously different effort. We wanted to go out quickly also. I mean, basically, we ran the research in December and launched it in April. That was the fastest we could do it. If we would have taken more markets, it would have taken even longer. And the other reason is, of course, that Singapore right now is definitely has a completely different momentum right now. For the last 1.5 years already, there is definitely a movement happening in Singapore. First on the talent side, but then secondly also now on the employment side, which you can see, and that's what we wanted to capture now, so that we have a baseline, and then we can see in a year where it's gone and go deeper into some areas, maybe extend it to another geography too, but to be seen.
Yeah, sounds good. So Umar Shankar, Britta, and then we have also Pradeep, missing one name, Umar, yeah, Poonam as well. I think we'll go a bit more detailed into geography. Priyanka, do you want to mention something? Sorry.
No, I thought you couldn't pronounce the name, so I said Paramdeep.
Harandeep. I'm so sorry. Thank you for that. Sorry if I butchered the name. Apologize. I think we will go a bit deeper into the sectors. Let's look at it, Moritz, or anyone within this community who wants to take this on, and then we can look at it from geographical region as well. There is a very another question that is from Carolyn. Thanks, Carolyn, for the question. Is, whether are we going to look, sorry, it's from N Yo, my apologies, that whether, how is this a career progression? And maybe, and if I may pause a little bit, because we have the invitation also of our panel speakers who are there, and I think they are going to also address this question, is that we already have the terminology of consultants, right? With this terminology of consultants, how does, this movement towards portfolio fractional workforce change in terms of career progression? So can I ask you to kindly then pause with us, and then we'll address this question where we bring in the panel speakers as well. And Moritz, also feel free to jump in when we have the panel discussion towards this question.
Yes, happy to.
All right. So I think that's mainly all the questions. We don't go too deep into each sector. So Umar Shankar, you mentioned about cybersecurity. I think it's not very deep so far, but this is a good time perhaps to get the insights from the few our panelists who will share about their experiences working across different industries. And may I then invite as well Melissa Tiro Park, as well as Lydia Ng into this session. And Boris, I invite you to continue to stay in the spotlight. Priyanka, can I ask you to also spotlight our two speakers, and then so that we can go on to get their insights to some of these questions. But it seems like Moritz, I think more research is needed. So let's see what we can do about that after this. Yeah. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Lydia.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Caroline.
Hi.
Hello, Moritz.
Yeah, so thank you for being here. So I just want to briefly introduce our two esteemed speakers. Some of them are friends that I've known for a very long time, so always good to have people that we have worked with together come in and join this very also meaningful discussion, because it's really about how the evolution of careers and jobs would be. So first of all, we have Melissa Tiro Park. Melissa is a very, very experienced senior HR leader. She has also her own interesting story of how she is looking into portfolio careers. She has worked across various industries in supply chain, in logistics, in consumer goods, some of the brands that you might know as well, and as well now recently in biotechnology. So Melissa, you bring with you also this breadth of experiences and your personal, move into also having a portfolio career as a coach and as a founder now. So congratulations for this move. I think it happened also within the last 2 years, and great to have your insight. And then I would love, perhaps you'd like to share a few words, Melissa, before I introduce Lydia as well.
Sure. Well, thanks for that, Carol, and covering that. But yes, so as Carol mentioned, I have been an HR professional for over 20 years across the quite a few industries. I am also an international coaching federation certified coach. So it really has been due to my passion for coaching around transitions, change, and team development. And this inspiration for a shift in a portfolio career for me really stemmed from a redundancy. So I did not fill in Moritz's survey, but certainly really resonate on some of the things that that was, the results of that survey. So I had a redundancy about 3 years ago. And at that point, I knew that I still had a couple of corporate roles I wanted to do. So I wasn't done yet. But I also knew that it was time to plan for a future and diversify. And I think I kind of came up in the same kind of wave that Moritz is talking about in Singapore. So I'm based out of Singapore. So of wanting to do something different, wanting to make a change in a different way. So I did. I started my own coaching and HR consulting organization. And at the same time, I knew I still wanted to look at my next corporate opportunity. So now I'm 10 months into a corporate role and juggling a full-time role with coaching clients on the side. It hasn't been easy, but it's been fulfilling and really helping me plan for the future. And I have to say that Moritz information kind of really gave me a lot of confidence about the future that I'm slowly building, the building blocks for.
Thank
So
you.
that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. See, Moritz, you're already inspiring with just data alone. So
I love
wonderful.
this. These stories
Yeah.
are the best. Honestly, I can't think of anything better than this is what how I get to spend often my day speaking to people like have gone through this, Melissa. That's awesome.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks. And next we have Lydia. So Lydia has moved far ahead of the curve, right? Lydia, you've started this whole journey 10 years ago. So Lydia moved from a corporate career after 10 years and spent the next 10 years looking into already being a founder, but also, doing fractional without it being labeled fractional, I can imagine, Lydia. She's hired people also into fractional roles, or, part-time project-based roles, depending on, how we label them, depending on what the client needs as well. Lydia has worked previously with Grab and Singtel in senior leadership positions, and now she has also will come in and share her insights about what does that mean when you move across from corporate to independent work, and also now working with clients to find solutions, but also with independent workforce as well. Lydia, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Carolina, for inviting me to this. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here to talk with everyone. And I would say that I guess you said it so well. I mean, the introduction, I think you said it better than I can say it myself.
Cool.
But I would just like to add a little bit, which is I think my career has been really atypical. It's not a kind of straight line projection thing. So whatever I share today, hopefully it can resonate with some people. I wouldn't say that it might resonate with all, but hopefully what I share would be of use to someone listening in today. And also for Moritz, I think it was very interesting what you're doing, because I think this area of fractional leadership is really not really documented much, at least in our region. So appreciate also what you're doing, because I've also worked in market research before, so I can appreciate all the research that's coming out from what you've been sharing. Yeah. So maybe I can do a little bit of background of what I do, Carolina.
Go ahead, Lydia.
Thank you. So, background-wise, I started actually in agencies, in WPP agencies. So, like these kind of work that I used to do. And then, generally, what I do is marketing leadership, digital transformation at companies. And after I moved from agencies, big and small, I went into in-house roles. So I worked in Singtel, and then I last worked at Grab. Grab, when I worked with them, was still considered a startup. It's not a big organization like it is today. So I joined them as the first head of marketing when they were like really small in Singapore. And so all these experiences that I had, it was basically bridging technology, business growth, and customer experience. So after those, I think I was working for about 10 years. And then after years working in that kind of a different kind of environments, I realized that I wanted to shift gears. And so then I started a company 10 years ago called Thinktechniq. So when I founded Thinktechniq, it was actually not what it is today. It was actually a startup advisory based on my experience growing companies. But the market was too like didn't understand it at that point of time. So I pivoted to do something that the market could understand in order to cash in on it, if you so to speak. So I went to pivoted back to agency work, which was more like doing the digital marketing execution. But along the way, what me and my team realized was that we were giving away this consulting part of it, advisory work, free of charge, which was something that I didn't know that my competitors were not doing. Like it was just inbuilt in us to give advisory and strategy, and this is what you should do for your digital and marketing programs. And then I later realized that, hey, wait, we're actually not charging for this. We're actually only charging for the executional work, which yeah, is more what people understood. So fast forward, I now actually put in something that is like just purely consulting, and I also moved into being a fractional CMO and CDO. And this was more from the purpose-driven point of view, because I realized that, our lives are not, I mean, life is short, and we should be chasing purpose rather than profit all the time, which I used to do. And so I actually moved away from like the agency work. We still do that, but I moved away to kind of turn it on its head to focus on the 3 Ps in the order of purpose, people, and profit, rather than just putting profit first. So that's kind of like an introduction, little bit add on to what you've shared, Carolina.
Thank you, Lydia. Since that, you already mentioned that, you move now forward to looking into more targeted focus, right? Also, was it person, people, what? People, passion,
Oh,
profit. Is that
purpose
correct?
first. Purpose
Purpose,
first. What are we doing this for? Then people.
purpose,
Who
people,
who is it impacting? And then third would be profit. How do we
profit. How can
all
we
generate something out of this? Yeah.
financially sustainability as well? And also you shared that how you've got started. So perhaps you could also, I think, and I think it's also on one of the slides from Moritz that we didn't see as well, right? So what do you think, how do you think organization, can better integrate fractional talents, right? Because you work with various projects, you came from the corporate world working with large organizations. You were one of the first employees of Grab in their marketing team, leading marketing for them. Are there some strategies or some areas that you feel that companies should look further into, and that they would not lose the momentum, or whether would they lose ownership of that process because now leveraging fractional talent workforce?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting point. One thing that I don't see that much in Singapore is the recognition of what fractional leadership is about. It's very new, it's very nascent, it's just a few years old. So sometimes organizations that I work with, they don't have the vocabulary to describe what they actually want. That's one thing that I realize. So I think the first thing would be, I mean, kudos to you, Carolina, and what you're doing here to educate the market of what fractional leadership is. And the fact that organizations need to understand what are the various options available for them. To be honest, I mean, some of the opportunities that I got, as I said, I'm not really typical. So some of the opportunities I created myself. Sometimes they don't advertise it as fractional leadership, but after speaking with them, then I carved out something for myself. So sometimes it's about working together with them more collaboratively. And this also goes into like the work itself. So when you actually start working with organizations, I feel that there are different kinds of organizations, the openness to work together with a fractional officer. Some are more collaborative than others, and I feel that the ones which work best is when they take a very collaborative point of view, where the ones that don't work when it's a hand-off. It's like, this is yours and you do it and that's it, please get it done. So that's not really what it is about. I feel that for organizations looking to hire fractionals, it should be about co-creation. There should be shared accountability. I think that's very important. And I think so when they start to work together with fractionals, I think one of the research findings was about how fractionals can bring in the value of communication. I think that's very important, like communicating together with different people in the teams of organizations. So both the C-suites and the kind of the leadership, the leadership of the organization and how you communicate with them to drive things forward, but also the rest of the team, like the workers, right? The employees, the staff, and how do you work together with them as well? So a fractional should be able to work jointly with the operating team as well as leadership team. So at Thinktechniq, we try to push this a little bit. So what we do is that we try to form frameworks and processes, introduce these frameworks and processes to the internal team. So they typically the outcome is like they will probably go like, oh wow, we didn't know that we can do things this way before, thanks for putting this together. So it becomes a very structured approach to how they can do a certain thing. It could be in the area of growth, it could be in the area of competitive research, it could be in the area of marketing and digital. So we try to use frameworks and processes so that things are not too gray. So this ensures that the momentum stays strong and the ownership still remains within the company. So to this point, back to your question, how can organizations work well with fractionals? I think it's really about trust and partnership. So these two things are really key for this to last. Yeah.
Wonderful. So trust, make sure that you have shared ownership, alignment, accountabilities are clearly also communicated, and how can you see each other as a partner? I think that's very crucial. And there is also a question about career progression as, consultants now that we are fractionals. But let me pause that question still for a little bit more. And so give us a little bit more time, because I would like to really now go on to ask Melissa this question, right? Melissa, you've worked across all various industries, and you're on the other side with corporates, and now you're also in this transition. So what do you think companies should do? Or organizations can do better when it comes to integrating fractionals professionals? Are there any mindset shifts? Are there any career progressions that are being looked at, to Anne's question, when it comes to bringing in either labeling them as consultants or fractionals if they are with higher experience or more seniority? What do you think, Mel? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the things I think Lydia's really covered, but if I were to kind of maybe look at it from the organization lens and some of the more critical shifts that's needed, one of the first thing you've already called out, Carol, which is really that cultural mindset. And what Lydia said is also resonates with me, is around trust, right? So we need to overcome, like, I think there's this perception that fractional means that you're less committed to your work. So how do we really look at fractional professionals from a corporate perspective, right? That they're strategic partners. It's not a temporary contractor. You're getting somebody with such deep level of expertise, especially if you're getting someone that has really a more, have the experience and the seniority. So from an HR perspective, I always look at it from how do we really actively foster that inclusive culture, and really seeing our employees that see that, there's a value that a fractional talent can add. And it's not sort of oh, that's just a temporary worker, because even temporary workers we shouldn't treat as such, right? Like there's value that different parts of our workforce can add to the work and to making our company successful. I also think so, and most of the shifts I think is more from a traditional organization. I think startups have a good way of kind of being malleable and really kind of getting to the forefront, and that's why they've been in this space. They have been trendsetters, right? They have been sort of early adopters of fractional work. And I think one of the other things is from a company perspective is like, how do we actually get clearer around our policies, our governance, our compliance? So how do we ensure that our world is changing so much? There's so much diversity in the laws that are out there from a labor law perspective. So how do we ensure that, there's Lydia brought this up, like a framework, but also from a contracting perspective that is really clear from a scope, and that there's a clear sort of what is that employer-employee relationship. And I think for me, the last part is around maybe this is where also career progression can happen, is that we often in this scheme, right, we overlook sort of a robust performance management system or a feedback loop. So how do we ensure that we clearly define that? Like, what is the return on investment? What is an outcome-based kind of metrics, so that and we're providing that consistent and constructive feedback. And again, I'm going back to what Lydia said, because there's so much richness there just around sort of how do we really build that shared accountability, right? And I'm looking at this person again as a talent for your organization. So how do we really manage that work, but also that we're not just dumping everything to these professionals as well, so that they can truly deliver on what is the agreed upon impact that they're going to make, and making that sort of really the key for us to continue to be successful, right? So yeah, so I think if we kind of get after this cultural mindset, clear kind of governance, and as well as having consistent and a robust feedback loop, we hopefully will be able to really make some critical shifts.
Thanks, Melissa. Moritz, maybe I jump over to you, because I saw that you have one slide just before you switch off your presentation, which is exactly the slide with companies. And Moritz has kindly and generously said that he's going to share this deck with us, with the committee. So whoever is here, if you don't see the presentation with the percentages, if it's relevant, We can always have a discussions after, but you get this presentation also within the deck. And yes, Moritz, do you want to talk a little bit more, which is I think is important for employees? There are some, I think, hiring managers or startup founders or individuals like us who are thinking to do this, as part of portfolio or full-time work. So what does this mean then, Moritz? Do you want to just add a
Yes.
little bit more to what Melissa and Lydia has shared so far?
Absolutely, and I usually appreciate the view, especially from an employer's perspective, Melissa, to look at the challenges also, because I know they're very, very real, and they're often difficult for fractionals who come from a different background, maybe sales, marketing, etc., to understand that there needs to be frameworks for corporates and larger enterprises to adopt that, right? I think that there's a main challenge, and we're still in this phase. This is now my view, right? My view is we're still in Singapore in this phase where awareness of the model and education about it are the two most important factors to make this model more successful. We're going to hopefully get sometime to a ball rolling down the mountain rather than pushing it up the mountain. But at this point, there's still a lot of education and awareness to be done. And a lot of it is around, and that's why the language that we use is important. And I'm not claiming that I own the definition, by the way. That's very important too. I'm just going to give you my view, and then you speak to other people about it. But you see these words thrown around. I just want to be kind of do my part in kind of talking about the different ways that people are getting engaged. I'm not getting stuck too much on the language because there's some very strong opinions about what isn't a fractional. I'll just tell you the different avenues in which independent workers are getting engaged from our perspective. There's clearly an opportunity to have interim support from an independent worker. And sometimes this is because the search for a permanent full-time hire is taking very long and you need to get started. Sometimes this is also because you want to potentially have someone who can then transition into that role. So this is a clear, like a stopgap sort of solution. It's fantastic. And that's also very, I think, accepted already. This is not new, right? But what is new is that you now have a much bigger talent pool because there's so much talent in this space. So you can get very specialized people to industry, to geography, to skills and competencies that matter to the role. And they are used to coming in and just picking it up and running with it for a short period of time. Then there's this fractional CXO. And I would say the core definition of the fractional, in my view, is that it's somebody who comes in and who takes over a function of sorts. That means if there's a fractional CMO, that means there is no CMO on the company side, right? That means even though they are, of course, an external, and they're for example, in a startup or elsewhere, they're clearly an external. They're not an employee. But for all intents and purposes of the day-to-day workflow, they are now the person who is driving the marketing strategy because they are a fractional CMO. You could define it even more tightly to say that they have to actually own the function in some way. But generally, it just means that it's someone very, very senior who's done this many times, and they can come in and act as a member of the leadership team, even though they're only there for 2 or 3 or 4 days a month. They're basically taking part and are completely embedded. The advisor function is very classic, and this is like an individual consultant who maybe is a senior advisor to the founder or to the CEO, and sometimes also on the board. Sometimes they're even in the background, like the team doesn't even know them. They're just somebody who helps a senior person on the leadership team get better at what they do. Sometimes this has a coaching element to it, sometimes not. And then there's two here, which more used to fall or generally fall into what you would give to a consulting firm, but now increasingly individuals are doing this work. And this is where it's interesting, right? Are you trying to upgrade a function? Let's say your finance function is still the same as 5 years ago when you were a team of 5, and now you're 150 people, right? Are you trying to get up to what it needs, what you need at the stage that you're at? You previously only had the option of either getting a very senior CFO full-time, which you might not be able to afford, or to get a consultancy in. Now you can get an individual who does that for you. Similar to the solving a problem. This is the classic, like, we don't know what to do with X market or X client segment or X operational problem, and we don't have the skills in-house. What do? Do we need to hire a consulting firm, which comes with all sorts of budgets and complications sometimes? do we need to hire someone full-time? But we don't really know. It's not a JD, right? We're trying to solve a problem here. We don't have a role really for that. And so this is a lot of the work that's coming in, I think, to independent workers. So it's a third way. I called it a third way because it's not a full-time hire and it's not a consulting firm. It is now a third option for those cases where you need neither. You need something different.
I love that. Thanks, Moritz, for sharing. I think it's really crucial that, you know, we phrase this as also a problem point that we as individuals want to solve for organizations, because I think there is someone who turned on their mic. I can invite that person to, yeah, thank you very much. Because a lot of us look into roles, look into a gig work, look into fractional opportunities. All we are doing is also solving a problem for organization. And I love how you've structured it to say that if I am an organization and I need someone very senior, but, you know, I may not have the budget for it, or if I am someone who really have a need for time base or time limit a point of view, how can I bring in an interim? And I think adding on, you know, the different structures and having clarity helps us as individuals also to tackle and highlight to the organizations that, hey, this is how we have come in, and labels can be hybrid. You know, it doesn't mean that we're one or another. And I think that's also very crucial. Now, what if this structure or this problem solving is not us as individuals, but I want to bring in a little component about AI because companies are looking at AI to solve issues as well, right? So technology is advancing. We have now robots maybe sitting next to us doing some of our jobs. There's a bit of fear, but there's also a bit of excitement. So one of the questions that we have also for the panelists is also, you know, what does this mean for society, right? Does this new different models, where there's a fractional portfolio, does it really help us when we have aging population? The 70 years old is, or the 70s is now the new, you know, 40s or the new 30s. Is this, you know, a healthy way forward as companies reinvent the way they look at talent, and for individuals who are reinventing their identities with various diversity of experience? Melissa, Lydia, do you want to jump in here? Moritz, feel free as well. Lydia, I see you've unmuted, so please go ahead.
Okay, I can share a bit of what I think.
Yeah.
There's this kind of blend of questions that I'll try to answer them as clearly, but let me know if I haven't. So for someone who has, to the slide Maurice shared, right, I have actually done all of the things that he has mentioned on the slide. I think I wanted to also add one point before we jump into this is there is a clear difference between like hiring a consulting firm and having a fractional leader. And this is from point of view of someone who has also done consulting, and who has also hired consulting firms to do the work. So one thing that I realized when I work with consulting firms is they have this very standoff kind of approach, which frustrates the organizations a lot. Like to the organizations, they have this thing that they need to solve, and then they pass it on to, they pay quite a lot to the consulting firms, and the results that come back sometimes are not really relevant to what the organization needs. There seems to be this kind of block, as though the consulting firms do not really understand from the inside what the organizations need. And that's what I think is the clear difference between like what we're talking about today, which is about the independent worker coming in to the organization, and the more standoff approach that a consulting firm takes, like a more traditional consulting firm takes. So to the point of AI and aging population, and basically I think what you're mentioning, Carolina, is that the world is changing, it's becoming more turbulent. So what can we do? You know, there's a lot of worries and fears and concerns. There was something also that I thought about when, you know, AI started to, there's the rise of AI. And then I realized that this thing is not going to go away, right? So it's here to stay. So I started to immerse myself in it. So basically what I do is to keep relevant. And I would stay close to emerging trends, what's happening in the market, especially in the areas of digital and AI. I'm also upskilling myself concurrently while doing my business and work. I'm actually going for studies. So I'm learning about using AI, how to create applications, web applications using AI. So now I can add that to my portfolio as well, I guess. But that's a secondary thing. I think the main thing is about staying in touch with what's happening, and then we can learn how to use it. To the fear of it, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people's jobs that's going to be replaced and is already being replaced by AI, and that is going to continue to happen. And if you ask like which industries, maybe there's some that will be more protected than others. I think that at the end of the day, all industries will be affected. But the good thing about it, at least currently, is that we still need humans to be around to do it, right? To guide the machines. We need to be there to be able to guide how to prompt the machines to achieve a certain objective and outcome. Yes, there are LLMs now, like large language models, which can kind of self-correct, but based on what I know, I mean, we can only try to control what we can control, right? There are things that are beyond our control, that are global forces that we can't affect that much. But as an individual, yeah, so I work at Thinktechniq. I work with a range of organizations, whether startups, scale ups, and established players, to help them with their strategies. But across all, I try to incorporate some of these new things that I learn, so that I can offer insights to what's relevant, and tell them before it happens. I try to tell them, maybe we should look into this and this. So for me, it's about bringing clarity into the teams that are trying to navigate this very uncertain, turbulent times, whether they are launching something or scaling up. I'll just try to bring that perspective. So I need to be aware of that. So that's about the changing landscape about digital and AI. The second question that you mentioned about with regards to aging population, and so I'll address this in a slightly different tangent, because why I started my company after I actually started my company at the height of my career, but I suddenly jumped out to start something of my own. I actually saw in a first hand, right, my parents, my dad, who was from the previous older generation, and then he would work in one company for his entire career, right? It would be like 40 years in one career. And I saw that it didn't really do him that good. Things happen, the company corporatized, and then they let go of people, and then they push things around, and he was eventually affected, and quite on had quite a rude shock, because from his point of view, it was this kind of supposed to be an iron rice bowl all the way, right? So having seen that, and having seen the way that the world was shifting over the past 10 years, I knew that job stability is not like before. So I feel that there's that opportunity, at least for fractionals, at least for independent workers. What we're trying to do here is to carve out for ourselves different pockets of opportunities, right? So that we are not it's like investing, right? Where we are diversifying our risk. So we have different pockets that are going on at the same time, steadily humming, so that if this one goes down, there's still this one, or we can kind of navigate our own life better, have more control when we diversify. So I think the way things are going with aging populations, there will be a lot more burden on the working population compared to the past, and there will be a lot of people who are not working anymore. So there are two things that we need to think about. One is, what happens to the people who have retired and they have a lot of expertise? What can we do about that? Currently, they're not being tapped, other than I'm in Singapore. There's this initiative by government to hire mature workers, and government will give some grant support in terms of salary money. I think it's up to 80% or something like that. I could be not updated in the percentages of the monthly salary of mature workers. That's the way that the government's trying to and incentivize corporations to hire mature workers. But not every organization has the same belief. By and large, they still think about it like they are kind of due for retirement, or they already retired. We shouldn't be, we want the fresh blood. So there's a lot of expertise that currently is not really tapped. I wouldn't really say that they could fit into the typical fractional model, just because of their needs would be different at their current life stage. But I think maybe if there's a way to tap on their expertise in maybe sharing forums, and in different ways like mentorships and things like that could be a way. I would also go as far as to say that there is an opportunity to capture their expertise and put it together into a shared database that could be pulled from, like a knowledge sharing with the use of AI, so there are opportunities to keep the knowledge, not let it leak away. That's one thing. The other thing, and I know I'm taking some time, sorry about that, so let me know. But the other part of it is, like, how about those who are still working? What does it mean for us? So I think that because of the squeeze, right, there will be a smaller working population trying to support a larger population which is not working. So jobs are going to get more stressful, and the pay is going to be like less for the same amount of work if you compare effort and ROI. And I think that the way that fractionals can, what we should look at is how can we stay adaptable? How can we constantly learn new contexts, new industries, new challenges, new perspectives, ways of thinking, to be applied to different projects or different kinds of ways. I think this is one of the key traits that a fractional needs to have, or an independent worker needs to have, which is to learn how to be adaptable, at least in
And
my point.
relevant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and relevant. Yes. So
Wonderful.
yeah,
Wonderful. I think, Lydia, that makes a lot of sense. Because I think all of us, I don't think I've ever heard someone being said that they're on top of technology advancements. Everyone that I've spoken to, even the ones who are in that that role where they are the chief data scientist or chief tech officer, they mentioned that they are learning, and no one has the whole answer of how the progression and advancements are. But if the mindset of this is really, really crucial to stay relevant, and the mindsets of organizations as well, right? How can we look into these innovative job models and bring in, talent, like Lydia said, with a lot of experiences, but maybe, may not like the current work models that our previous generations are used to. Now, Melissa, you've now coach a lot of people as well. That's part of your portfolio careers, right? You have also looked into individuals who are looking at career transitioning as part of this, and looking at how they have led with purpose in the way how they design their career. What are your thoughts on the same question that Lydia has answered when it comes to, advancement of technology? Perhaps just a couple of minutes to share.
I think
If you
Lydia's
may.
covered so much of it. I think the only thing I can say is that it's exciting the time that we are, where there's just so much things that are going on, and this space of fractional career is actually going to be, I hope the companies are going to be able to see it as really going to be a lifesaver for them, because you have a population that's going to be incredibly agile, and it will allow companies to actually be scalable as well, right? Adjusting and shifting wherever the project demands are, or where the market shifts are going to be, by using individuals that are going to be able to go in and do the work. And individuals, I think, that have high drive, but also such great learning agility, right? And Lydia said it, right? That many things that she's in and trying to understand. I'm also trying to understand AI. I'm probably a little bit slow at it, but I'm taking a master's program as part of my my advancement, right? So there's certain things that I think you continue to do and develop, so that you continue to be better and become more of an expert in that space. So maybe I'll just say that, Carol, as an add-on.
Thank you. Thanks, Thanks, Mel. Yes, I think we all have we all are in different parts of our career journeys, and we all are constantly upskilling, trying to stay relevant. Some days I think probably a lot of people here can relate. Feels like, oh, it sometimes gets a bit breathless. And part of why Moritz and I we decided to come together here is because we are in the end in a community of individuals who are very smart, very passionate, with lots of experience, and all solving societal's problems, even as part of larger organizations or smaller organizations. And I think we can help each other in the process, right? Being able to help each other. Mel, Melissa, Lydia, I'm learning AI too. Perhaps that's a separate discussion about what this means and how we can use AI in our day-to-day work and have meaningful careers along the way. Now, thank you so much, Lydia, Melissa, for sharing. I think we have quite a lot of happy, inspired individuals as I read from the chat groups because of the steps you both take, and Moritz, from your research as well. You have inspired many just to take that little steps ahead, right? Maybe be it moving from thinking from a full-time work to going into perhaps, a side gig, or moving fully into independent work and trying to identify ourselves and finding this community that we have here. Now the N Ahead Portfolio Careers in Asia community, or the Flexer community, Moritz. So I think as a next step, Moritz, I'll let you also share a few words before we break out, is that I know some of you have other fractional roles, which is being a mom, being a dad, being a grandparent, whatever it takes, or needing to walk the dog, or, finding time with our loved ones to relax, for those, especially in Singapore. But for those who would like to share, to stay on with us, we promise that this would be a bit more interactive as well. I think we want to do a very short breakout group to have a reflection moment of what does this mean for us? What is the next meaningful step we're going to take? What does this mean? Maybe a next meaningful step for ourselves or our organization. What can we do even tomorrow? Taking all the insights of today. So before we break out into breakout rooms, I just want to say thank you very much, all three of you, for sharing your insights, your experiences, and also to the wonderful community here for all your questions. I think this is a trend that definitely we need to look into. There are actually individuals, I should not name who, in the public sector of Singapore within this conversation that are hearing out. I know they're working very hard to make sure that we take some of the initiatives and put it to life in action with the organizations they work with. So the inspiration that is shared today, as well as the insights, will go further, I hope, as well, beyond this conversation. So thank you. Moritz, you want to say some last words before I end? Or we go into breakout?
I keep it super brief. What we're doing as community leaders is supporting amazing drive and talent, right? And I would say I have never met so many people who come from an incredibly high level of experience and skill, having been in senior C-level positions, sometimes regional positions, country managers, etc., who take the leap into independent work and see themselves in front of a very steep learning curve, because you have to find ways to get business, pitch, negotiate fees, issue invoices, all things that you've never done before, position your offering, right? And what I experience in my community, which is so inspiring for me, is a drive and a motivation from people who are already like 20 years into their career, right? To continuously keep learning. And this is why I think you see no group of people more excited and eager to learn about AI also than independent workers, because they see the opportunity to differentiate themselves also in the market where often corporates are, of course, as usual, taking a little bit longer to figure out the training programs and all this, but you can, as an individual, really make a difference in your own skill set there, right? So I would say never, ever underestimate an independent worker and what they can do, because they have already made the hardest leap, which is to jump halfway through a very, very successful, often very successful career into a new, very steep learning curve. That's, I think, a key thing of what drives me. And I think that's why I would also tell any employer, if you get the right person to work with, you're going to be so lucky. And I see this every day where people say, wow, I wish I had known of this earlier, right? So with that, thank you for having me. And thank you, Melissa and Lydia. It was great meeting you. And I hope we can continue the conversation. Happy to share the research with anyone who'd like to know. And happy to answer questions afterwards. Also, you can find me on LinkedIn. anyone in the group.
Thank you.